Welcome to Travel Around the Block. Join Joel, Mike, and their guests as they explore how Web3 and AI are reshaping the way we journey, invest, and connect across the globe.
Welcome back to Travel Around the Block, where we dive deep with trailblazers shaping the future of travel. We're your hosts, Mike and Joel, and today we have Rob Lee, co-founder and COO of SwiftPass, a boutique passport visa service provider. So, Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, Rob, we really always like to learn a little bit more on the founding story of a startup, but let's just say, so the question really is, what is the founding story since you guys started back in 2007? Is about right?
Yeah, 2007. So we started as Swift Passport Services from a need for various visa and passport situations. My wife and I we were married at the time. We had moved to Costa Rica. And from there, we traveled quite a bit.
As one does, Rob.
Yeah, it was kind of...
That's a great story in itself.
We both worked for the U.S. Forest Service. We don't have business degrees or anything. I was a forestry guy and she was a biology person. And we met in the U.S. Forest Service, of all places. And had a number of events when we lived in Panama, especially. We needed to extend our stay with a visa. We first found out about the ability to slip a guy $50 cash and get in the front of the line. And then one time we were going to a family wedding in South Africa and we got there all the way from Costa Rica. It was like a 24-hour trip to get there. And Lori, my wife, had run out of visa pages in her passport. And they were like, you got to go back to the United States. We're like, we didn't even come from the US. Like, you got to go back to the US. And long story short, we were able to cry our way into staying in South Africa. So that's where it all started. And here we are almost 20 years later.
Since 2007, you and your wife, the two co-founders, finding a personal problem you guys experienced and thought, hey, there's something here, right? So essentially, you guys experienced this problem and then you said, okay, maybe we can help others because you guys had this. And then you guys also deliberately wanted to keep this a small boutique model, right? I think one of the things you said, or for your company, it's great, not big. It's literally part of your positioning. So curiosity is, what made you decide after almost 20 years of that philosophy that this was the moment to build an AI product to go after scale?
We started calling ourselves small but mighty. We had come from managing a hotel, like an eco lodge in Panama. So that's where we got into this hospitality type space, and we learned quickly there what good customer service was. And it was a very small, it was 5 bungalows out over the water in a remote part of Panama. And the need for customer service was like, we had to be like a 5-star hotel. Like, the people that were coming were paying a lot of money to be there. So we learned this customer service and the satisfaction that people got from good customer service. And we realized quickly through mistakes that managing people's expectations was key, especially with all this personal information that we're gathering from people, and people have to make trips. And we quickly, as we got into the business, we're hearing what big companies in our space were doing. So we decided early that if we stay small, we can offer this level of customer service. And I think after all these years, the capability of being able to build something was, with the dawn of AI, is now like, you could say anybody could do this, but not anybody could do this, but it just became possible to do something that we've been really thinking about for almost 10 years at this point. So we stayed small, and I think we'll always be this small but mighty company. And we've taken pride in that. And it's easy to have people buy into that. We're small but mighty, and we're not this big, massive machine that just loses the personal touch.
And one thing, Rob, I'm trying to get a better understanding of is, obviously we travel personally and we have visa requirements. I know that when we had first chatted, I told you my personal story when I was going to Dominican Republic and I was checking in at the flight and they asked me for my visa and I didn't even know I needed a visa. Say, for example, a major consulting firm sending a bunch of people overseas, or airline crew or cargo crew that might need to send a lot of people to different parts of the world
Right.
all the time. That seems really complicated and a lot of inefficiency potentially.
Yeah. Lots of inefficiencies. Where we saw a lot of people, it's like major companies or a client, one of our major big clients, as you mentioned, Airline. They're using spreadsheets to keep track of whose visas are what, and there's no software. You could invent software or use tools that you have, but like Excel was like the thing that people like, oh, here's a roster of all the employees that travel internationally. When's their expiration date? And it's like the margin of error is just massive. And someone would renew a passport and not realize that they had a valid visa in the old passport. And then all of a sudden they're trying to travel with this new passport, but they lost the old passport and they forgot that they had a visa. So we saw the issues quite a bit, just things slip through the cracks, human error.
Yeah, I can imagine, because if you think about the other side of the coin, if you will, is you said it's very manual, but now it's also very complicated, right? Because every country, every consulate, they have different rules, different documentation requirements, different
Mhm.
processing. So with all those different processing quirks and changes and everything like that, what part of that process turned out to be the easiest to automate?
The part that really came together cleanly was like the repetitive rule-based work, like requirements for a given a country. In this app, we can pre-fill forms. So you have like a big group from a company going to one office in China. They're all going to fill out the same host and destination in China, and trying to transmit that information via email, and it gets lost. People get frustrated. It's like they're entering wrong information. And so this app can now store all that information based on the company. So Acme Widgets in Shanghai is the inviting company. This customer of ours now has that pre-filled on all their Chinese visa applications. So we're taking this repetitive, I guess you could call it rule-based work, and pre-filling forms with that information, travelers' biodata. It's like we can take all this information that people are filling in all the time, and whether it's China, India, Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, wherever, like there's this core information that we have to enter every single time. And if we could save time for someone, like, especially if you travel a lot, half the information is already stored in the system and can just populate for you or for your team. Makes it easier for the individual traveler and the admins managing it. Questions that people have: who's the host? What's the phone number? Like, it takes away all of that confusion and misinformation, I guess you could call it. And it gets passed around. Oh, someone said this, and like there's just so many things that could get hung up and cause a delay of some kind.
Yeah, I imagine there's probably a dollar figure attached to that too, right? If you're
Mhm.
sending a team of people and then all of a sudden visa requirement isn't met, certain people can't make it or go there, there's some cost associated to that, right?
Whether it's a missed trip or with an airline, a grounded flight for a couple hours, it's like, how much does that go downstream from a delayed flight?
So obviously you probably built up a huge amount of mental database of edge cases and different consulate quirks and visa requirements in your head. You have a lot of institution knowledge. And did you have to explicitly teach, like, how are you applying that institution knowledge to the development of or leveraging, let's say, AI for, or is that kind of something you're working towards, but right now you're using AI to do more other parts of managing the efficiency?
So the AI portion of it, like you might think that there's this database that you can pull all this information about entry requirements from. I add thematic would be like the go-to source for the travel industries, but you got to pay for that. And then to filter through their data, it's a long process. So there's nothing really that is out there that is totally accurate. There's like base knowledge that, like, oh yeah, if you're going to China, you need a visa. But like where you're talking about the institutional knowledge, like there's so much of that here. So it's between my partner Lori and I, that's 40 years of knowledge. Then we have a couple of employees with another 20, 30 years. So we have this institutional knowledge of almost close to 75 years of just experience. And we took our side, our view of this, and then also we worked alongside this customer and seeing their pain. So like we combined it together. And I think the AI and the learning part is taking this data that's available to people. You could go to websites, you could go to the US State Department, and it's compiling it all together. And we still have to have a human verify all this. Like, even like a good example might be South Korea. There's something, I think there's 12 South Korean, maybe 15 South Korean consulates in the US alone. And each of them has a completely different requirement. Some you have to send in a physical application, some it's online, some it's, oh, you can't send your passport. And so it's like this institutional knowledge we're trying to take what this AI is pulling, and then we're adding in our own human knowledge to it. So it's an interesting project that like it's like there's times where it's like I've spent all weekend trying to put together something for like a country like South Korea. It's like, how do you take something where there's 15 different requirements for the same country for the same visa, and then get it out into a usable format that someone can use easily, where that information's out there, but it's the time that it would take an individual or an executive admin to filter through it all, you go crazy.
I can imagine.
I'm curious if you have had the sense that, wow, AI can do so much more than I realized when I started, or conversely, is it at all a case of frustration that AI is more limited than the headlines would appear, or anywhere in between? I'm just curious, since you were coming at it from the point of view of an operator moving toward tech, I'm just curious what your first impressions are of the technology and whether they've gotten more bullish or more cautious as you've gone further into it.
When it first came out, and my father-in-law, he's way into AI. I mean, he's this retired guy that's doing all this crazy stuff with AI. He's like, oh, you could run your business from AI. I'm like, what? What's this? And I checked it out, and it was like, oh, this is really cool. But I think it kind of gets a little more restrictive. There's all these sources, and it's pulling all this information from everywhere, and it's all accurate in its own right. Like, it's pulling information, but where I think the big hang up or the big hurdle that we had to overcome is there's all these different points of information, and they all have valid points, but we still have to figure out what's the accurate point. And to maybe more specifically to your question, the results of purely AI getting this every time are so irregular that I think that was my biggest, oh, it's an irregular result. If you change this word just a little bit, like I need a airline crew visa to China, for like quite literally the wording could, if you just had an open chat available on your website, the results would be potentially different every time, or just enough different that it could cause problems. And that actually surprised me a little bit. Oh, that's the limitation of these models that we're dealing with now, which I can see that as we put more information into it, that's going to go away. But that's where we're at right now.
I'm curious, when you looked at this bulk B2B visa service, how did you find your pilot customer? It's not always easy to find that first pilot customer that wants to take a chance on the relatively new. So can you share with us a little bit? That's something that every entrepreneur, I think, can relate to, is getting that first test case established.
I would say with this client, we've worked with this client since early in 2010, when it was just my wife and I. The first thing that we did with them, there was like a swine flu outbreak or something like that, and pigs died, and they needed to ship living pigs to Russia. So we had this kind of long, slow relationship with this customer. And one of the main people that we worked with there, her and I would talk on the side, kind of like dreaming about, oh, maybe one day we'll be able to have this. So we had this customer that the contact that we had there, she's no longer there, but her and I kind of would just go off on tangents after conversations that pertain to what we were doing for him at the time. And she kind of set the seed inside the company, and then she left, and then the pandemic happened. And the biggest thing that we do for them is Chinese visas. And like you said, Mike, Chinese visas are crazy, but they used to be the easiest thing. There was a 4-page PDF that you could kind of just fill out the signature page. You could keep copies of all 4 pages and then just fill out the signature page. And they were kind of like, we don't need this. They weren't sure because of the pandemic what was going to happen. Obviously, it was very good for cargo, like the global logistics boom after or because of the pandemic. I'm sure really benefited them, but they weren't really interested in trying to explore something new. And then one day we got a phone call. Yeah, we're interested. And it took them quite a while, but we started showing them some samples of what we were thinking. And they're like, oh, this is really good. And then we finally got them to agree to be a beta test pilot customer, whatever you want to call it. We signed a beta contract that lasted like 5 months. And at the end of the contract, it was like, okay, this is the end of the contract, but we're going to sign, like the goal was to sign a full production contract. And I think just the fact that we worked with them for so long was the key in like going to a company now and trying to sell this. But like we have a living proof been adopted contractually by a major airline out there.
That's awesome. And did you have a sense ever through your dialogue with them what problem they were fundamentally trying to solve? Like what benefit were they hoping to glean from it?
What was happening is they had, I don't know how many full-time employees entering visa applications, and then also keeping track on a spreadsheet of whose visa was expiring, and then finding time in their rotation and time off to apply for this visa. In the pandemic, the Chinese visa application process was so complex. Like you had to apply for an appointment to submit this application, and this appointment could be 4 weeks out. So these people could still keep flying, but they had to get us this passport for this appointment or this appointment. It was like a logistical nightmare for them. And I think the biggest thing is saving internal time. It's like they can log into a system, search by name, search by fleet, search by so many different criteria. Who's got valid visas, who's in process, who we're waiting on a response from, because that's also a common issue. It's like, hey, we told them we need a new sign, whatever, and we're waiting on them, and now they can look and see where things are at. And it's quite a revolutionary item for them. The other thing that we're working on, we haven't gotten to this point yet, but this will be, I think, the biggest benefit to them. They have a crew management software that they use to schedule. I don't even know how many crew members they have, into the thousands of crew members. And they have this program that schedules, we're going to link up with them, but that program doesn't store visa details. It just stores basic information. So now if we can communicate back and forth, what's that going to do for, for their scheduling and their efficiencies and time off?
For the folks listening, our industry is so full of opportunities that are ripe for that kind of process efficiency. And for some reason, we seem to be, as an industry, kind of gluttons for punishment and have a lot of opportunities to make things work better for a lot of folks. Like it's maybe not from a human being's point of view, it's not their most favorite thing to do to fill out a form. Even for an admin, they have, I would argue, many better things to do than to recurringly. And so it's helpful on a human level. But then, like you said, if you pull back and look at it from a corporate point of view, the time savings across all those employees is rather significant.
Thank you.
You're helping companies from a financial point of view and also helping the human experience, which I always like to see happening. If we're going to have tech, let's not forget about the people and have their day feel better to them.
I'm curious from your side, Joe, in your experience, your past life, if you were on the TMC side, is visa processing part of the TMC scope? Do they support that?
So it's usually done, if at all, it's via partnership. It's part and parcel of the end-to-end traveler experience. And so I think if you happen to be a TMC out there listening, I would say, give some thought to how might you make that process easier for your clients and all their travelers. Seems like a relatively easy pickup in satisfaction and a nice way to just smooth their way. We often, from a TMC point of view, there was sometimes a little bit of a tendency to think about the travel from the moment you kind of leave the house for your flight, and maybe even just starting at the point of flight to be even more direct about it. But there are those things that are, on the way to that point that are crucial.
The human experience, like that's one of the rewards that we didn't expect, is like the people that we've worked with, especially in this company, and they're like, oh, this is so much easier now. And it's like, oh, like it's nice to hear that. It's not like a ROI that you're seeking, but when you get it, oh, you just made this so much easier for me. Thank you. Like someone like it legitimately impacted someone's job, which was like, oh, that's cool.
So it seems to me that what you guys are doing is relevant at the spreadsheet level, but also at levels beyond that as well. When you think about sending groups of employees abroad, that's a very compelling niche, in my opinion. Event staff, conference delegations, film crews, sports teams, and many other scenarios. I'd wonder from your point of view, which segment do you see pulling the hardest for this? And do you think that'll continue to be the case, or do you see it changing over time?
This customer we've been so deep in with airline crew, and that's what's pulled this to fruition, if you will. However, our base clients aren't just all, we have a number of airlines. The other industry would be manufacturing and pharmaceutical. But like, again, the hidden nature of the services, there's all these companies that can do this, but they all have their own proprietary service. And what we're seeing is like there's this widespread people everywhere working remotely, or they're at a factory and trying to get this information into one centralized location. And so what we're showing people is that all this can happen in one place. It's not it's just a web application that you go to. You don't have to have software. And so this manufacturing and pharmaceutical area, like just because things are spread out so far around the country, we're seeing that to be like kind of like the close second to what we're trying to do. And there's this human element behind it that sure, technology can take you to a point, but then there's this human touch behind it that we take pride in. It's the human touch side of it.
I can't help but think about all the companies out there that are trying to find their entry point with AI. But meanwhile, the win is often in some relatively unglamorous, unsexy process that is ripe for a fresh take and a bit of process efficiency. And some of that might be gained just by reimagining the process, but then maybe there's a role often for a certain amount of automation and AI. And so I would just dare to say for any enterprise listening, don't overlook the problem that our guest is on, because I know the folks listening are often looking for where are those obvious low-hanging fruit kind of quick wins, and this might be just the thing that they should think of whatsoever. And over to you, Mike.
I think one of the key themes in when we used to do corporate innovations with travel companies is a frictionless travel experience, right? Like what technology, what solution can affect this? And it's always been a bit difficult to really have that end-to-end traveler experience that's completely frictionless, because if you're talking about the airlines or e-hotels, OTAs, etc., they only have like certain snapshots, right? What I really like about this obviously is personal pain. I know I've had this pain before. I've experienced this pain. I have friends and family that's experienced this pain, having to deal with visas. I know there's the e-visa and there's the visa on arrival that's happening and so forth, right? Individually, that is okay, not big of an issue, if you will. It takes a little frustration, a little time. But if you scale this out to a large company with lots of people traveling and everything like that, I can definitely see how this just could like really grow. The other side that I'm really excited to maybe learn a little bit more is leveraging AI for the efficiency of gathering the data and processing the visa. But we are obviously also going into a world where there is AI agents. So if we imply, okay, potentially if Joe and myself, Rob, we all have a 24/7, 365 AI agent that could hopefully in the next few months or less than a year from now, let's see how it goes, but can actually do everything from search to booking, right? So let's say I want to go to 3 or 4 different countries, and I tell my AI agent to go ahead and find out the best route, the best price. It has all my profile and personalization information, etc. My digital ID, perhaps as well. It has my passport and my global entry and whatnot. Now imagine that AI agent then has the ability to tap into Rob or SwiftPass, then to be able to say, hey, my guy is going to XYZ country. He has a US passport. We know he needs a tourist visa or a business visa or whatever. Okay. And then just passes that off to Rob's AI agent to do all the heavy lifting, right? I could totally see that being a whole another part of the offering. But is that your thinking? Do you think that's a world we're going to go into, is where humans don't even need to really fill out these forms and mail these forms in and all of that?
on the wall.
They probably know you, especially if you're dealing with, like in China, there's this concept it's called 关系.
I have, yeah.
So when you do business in China, 关系 is basically a relationship, right? That is the definition of 关系, the translation, if you will. So you have that relationship. So you have 关系with the Chinese consulate, if you will. They probably know you, like you go there and do business. Do you think it's going to be different? You going in there with all the document and taking care of all that? Do you think that's going to like facilitate the process? Do you think using an AI process is, I think it's probably going to be a lot faster, a lot more efficient.
And our relationship with the consulate, we've been in this space since 2012. So 14 years, they've been in the same spot. And they've cycled through people, but I as much as they've put into technology for the visa application form, I think our relationship with them is still very human to human. Meeting them in the hallway, just like you said, we take it very seriously. And if we have someone new that starts working with us, we take them into the consulate to introduce them to the people there. So there's this human to human relationship that's still really important, I feel, especially with the Chinese. And I think there's a mutual boundary. Like they know we're here. They have to walk past our office to get to their office. So we still have to submit physical passports to the Chinese consulate. However, we're able to quickly get applications submitted because of this product. So if there was a mistake and they wanted something recompleted, or someone came in at the last minute, they see us and they send people to our office to fill out applications, and they know that it'll be done correctly. We love being next door to them. Like it's a cool thing to be able to experience. Like hundreds of people walk by every day, and they walk in, they're kind of like, what the hell is this place I walked into? We're here. I think the whole process, like I'm walking into the Chinese consulate, and it's very businesslike with glaring white lights, and there's like an intimidation factor behind glass windows, and it's an interesting place for us to be. And I guess I could hope that if they become aware of this technology or what we're doing, that there's some way to do something. But I really think that the human relationship with them is the most important, because we could sour it real quickly if we did something that they didn't like. But like, I think we're very respectful they allow us to kind of operate in their domain in a weird way in this office, if that makes sense, if they wanted to.
So Rob, just out of curiosity, which country would you say has the most tedious visa process?
I feel like the visa process, my personal opinion, is like that's one of the biggest diplomatic bargaining chips there is. So in the midst of the pandemic, we saw like there's all sorts of weird stuff happening. Like Australia signed some defense thing with the US about nuclear submarines, and China didn't like that. And all of a sudden, China requirements got tighter. But to go to your question, right now, I think China is one of them. South Korea is also very challenging, which you wouldn't think, because US travelers can go there visa free, but if you're a student or you're staying there longer than 60 days, you need a visa. And every consulate's got a whole different process. China used to be the easiest, and now I'd say it's up there. And then traditional Brazil visas that's even crazier. Brazil has always been they take reciprocity very seriously. So it's total tit for tat. But China, Brazil, and South Korea right now are the hardest, in my opinion.
There's a place in China called Hainan. It's like a very touristy, tropical kind of place. Right now, there's certain visas where I think you can go there and you can stay up to 10 days, but you have to leave. You have to show you have an outbound flight, etc. Right? But then I found out you can actually go to Hainan for 30 days visa free. So anyway, just a little bit for anybody that's listening that wants to go to China and not have to deal with visa.
Or Macau.
Right.
China's really opened up quite a bit. Like most European passport holders don't need visas anymore to go for short business stays. I think it's 15 days or less. So if you're a business guy or just a quick stopover going to another country in your European passport holder, you can get into China now without, they've really opened up their border to people.
And with this episode, I feel like we're looking at the subject of global dynamics and almost world peace through the very particular lens of visa processing. So I'll dare to say that, to the extent that visa processing can be a fulcrum of world peace, I think that would be a worthy aim for all of us to think about, is how might we
that gave me goosebumps.
policies across the board. And this is beyond the scope of the podcast, but I just wanted to say, but the exact nature of those policies, the feel, the vibe, even the nature of the office you walk into, how can that be a conduit to a peaceful, harmonious, lovely world, is something that I just wanted to offer.
I love it. But talking about everything like peachy and lovely, I do want to play a little bit of a devil's advocate on this one, Rob. So I'm going to ask you a question about your defensibility, or basically, if you think about, okay, what you guys are doing, visa processing, you're leveraging AI to gain efficiency and speed, etc. And then maybe later on, you'll do a little bit more with that. But other travel players, like we talked about TMCs earlier. So let's say MXGBT, for example, or the others, even immigration law firms, or even airlines or OTAs, or could they start building something similar? What's your honest read on whether a small specialized shop like yours building, and I love the fact that you guys have all this experience and then you're leveraging it to basically disrupt yourself, if you will. But how do you see anybody kind of getting into this, or like, is there a way for you guys to defend your product against other company that has a lot deeper pockets?
That's probably the biggest, like if we were to do a SWOT analysis of this product that we have, like, I guess I did do a SWOT analysis, but the biggest threat would be exactly that. Like there could be, and there probably are companies. There's
Yes.
Well, Amadeus is a good example. They're probably doing it already. We're going to face competition, and that's obviously very intimidating to someone that's small, and like the money behind someone like Amadeus, or that's something that we can't necessarily compete with. However, I think what I've touched on before that separates us is all this knowledge. You have like TCMs or TMCs, travel management companies, immigration law firms, things like that. They could do this. They can build part of the tool, but when it gets down underneath it all, there's still like all these crazy side nuances that will disrupt what is supposed to be like an easy process. Someone like Sherpa, which I love what Sherpa does, but like the placement in an airline checkout, like they provide this information, but can they provide the service that's getting the visa, or have the expertise, or know how to get the answer quickly to some random thing? Or who's monitoring when a consulate makes a change? That might not show up in a automated system like an AI detection, or like that's one of the tools that I'm sure anyone building anything was like, oh, if there's a change, we've got to know right away that there's a change. Sometimes that change is going next door and being like, yeah, we don't take that anymore. You got to do this. That happens all the time. What was Chinese visas, like this was fresh, like today, they just started putting your photo on the actual visa. Brazil used to do that, but China just started doing it, and we didn't know that they were doing that. And like they just started doing it, and it's, oh, okay, so that's what they're doing now. And people are like, I don't like the photo that's on my visa. And we didn't know it was going to be on the visa. We had no idea it was going to be on the visa.
Seriously.
That's a really small example, but it kind of goes to where I feel we have a strong position is we're so rooted in the actual core of this work. Like there's a lot of technology people that have come into the passport world. Like our core service offers U.S. passport services. They have great technology, and they're PE backed, and they have a lot of money to throw at advertising and things like that. But like when something doesn't fall within this mechanism that they've trained it to do, it's like it just blows up their system. So it wasn't like, oh, we launched this, tell us what you think. It was like in real time getting feedback. I think the opportunity that we had with this customer to pilot this was once in a lifetime opportunity, strictly based on the feedback that we were getting. Oh, no, that's dumb. They were like, oh, this is next level idea. And I still think it's the human side. But again, like you've mentioned like this could go away in a year. Like who knows where AI is going to be
I
in
mean, yeah.
9
I
months.
think obviously you guys have done your homework and you have a successful pilot that kind of helped evolve this product. I'm also already kind of thinking, like, I'm like, huh, what dots can we connect to? I don't know if you guys are already doing white label for other, right? But I'm already kind of, oh, Joe, remember when we were talking to Roy at Traveling, AI? They're kind of like this TMC that's doing the hybrid travel, business travel. But kind of, okay, hey, can you imagine? I can imagine if I'm going through a TMC and one of the program that's being built into it is, hey, it includes visa services automatically as part of it. So it's all within one platform, even though it gets pushed out.
We built this to be white label. Like we're white labeling it for ourselves right now, to be quite honest. Like we've gone past this beta phase and we're quite literally rolling it out to be like the foundational piece of our checkout on our website. So yeah, I think there's space to go. There's one aspect of this that I don't know how to, it's a selling point, but it's not necessarily a selling point, but we're calling it like a travel planner. And if you have a full complete profile, and let's say you have a couple other passports, maybe you have a German passport or you have a second nationality, it takes in all that information. And so you could say, I'm going to China, India, and Vietnam, and my primary passport's US and my secondary passport's German. And right now you can say, like the system will say, oh, if you use your secondary passport, your German passport, you don't need a visa to China. So it's already going in that direction. I don't know how to scale that to everything. Like it's all there, it all functions. And it's like, we've put a lot of pressure tests to it and it's like, okay, it works. And so we'll see where it goes, but that's exactly the thinking that we're like, how do we fit like the Swift passport and visa services, let's call it the legacy service that we offered, will still be there. And that's what I think, like I was trying to say, supports this digital aspect of it, but the digital aspect's got so many different little ways that it could kind of get in, like being part of a Concur or I don't know, Amex Travel. And one of the future features is, not to spill too much out, but like there's, regardless if you don't need a visa, there's still documents that you need to fill out to get into countries, even if it's not an ETA or an e-visa, but you still have to fill out immigration forms. And it's like now everything's, like you said, with the Dominican Republic, oh, there's just a QR code.
Yeah.
There's so many little nuances that it could fit in. And sometimes I have to rein myself back into like stay focused.
No, I like the way that you're thinking because it's exactly one of the problems that our previous season's guest, Miyoki, is the name of the start of the company that's doing like the centralized digital IDs, right? And they did a pilot where you have multiple, you basically go, I think it's two different airport, one airline, and end to end without having to fill out any forms or showing any kind of documentation, a lot of biometric data that's already there. But to me, I would love to see that being the future of travel, is just walk through.
Retina scan on everything.
It reminds me of, remember that movie that Arnold made, Total Recall?
Oh
And
yeah.
he was going through the airport and you could see as he's walking through this conveyor belt, the skeletal x-ray scan.
Yeah. Or just even the TSA, the Clear does it, but now TSA's got the retina scan, and that's all. Does that eliminate the need for any of this? It's like, we know everything about you based on your eye scan.
Yeah.
And like almost passports are almost becoming, like you come up to an immigration, like if you have to go through immigration, your stuff's already pulled up by the time you get to the counter with their near field communication. Like they know who you are. Like it's all happening. Stay on this kind of like wave of how AI, like it can't all happen at once. And there's too many countries that don't have the budgets of China's and India's and the US's that can roll this kind of stuff out. But I think it's all happening pretty quick.
Rob, this question might be a little bit closer to today than where we were with this conversation in the last 2 minutes. But passport and visa services famously are all about error rates, and the consequences of being wrong are so high. And that's, to me, part of what makes you such an interesting guest, is that you're applying technology and AI to an area where there really are some stakes involved. And I wondered, how do you think about liability issues and trust issues when AI is involved and maybe there wasn't a human being who physically, double checked every field in every file. How do you think about kind of liability and trust in an AI world?
That is, I think, one of the more important questions that I think not just this industry, but a lot of industries. It's you could put in a query into a chat and word it differently in ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini or something, and get similar response. But like it could be different enough that someone does something wrong or incorrectly. That's where I think I keep coming back to it, but like this human aspect of it for now has to be there, especially with the travel documents. If we get a notice that, oh, there's a change in requirement, like we still have to pretty much verify that. I think right now our biggest win is that our liability remains the same as it ever was. And I would rather at this point err on a human error than an AI error. I would rather say, sorry, we messed up. I messed up as a person than say, oh, our machine didn't do it. I feel like that's a bigger liability. I think a human error is much more acceptable at this point, but if you have machine learning that's making errors, I think you got a bigger problem with
It's
either.
interesting if a human makes an error, hopefully that was a moment of inattention or just almost like a cognitive glitch, if you will. But a system making an error, one has to consider the possibility that it's somehow embedded in the code and that it's going to do that at scale. So I think part of what makes AI worthy of enthusiasm, but also a modicum of more than a modicum of thoughtfulness and even caution and kind of governance, if you will, is just the fact that when you have errors happening quickly and at scale. So anyway, I think on this show, we try to have a balanced view of the possibilities, but also the risks.
In front of the guests.
That's what I had in the moment.
But I think it's a very real thing that we get to be concerned about. And I think anyone releasing AI technology at this point, is it the human error is still acceptable. It's like, oh, I made the mistake. I didn't see that you signed here. Sorry. But if the machine makes that mistake, then I think that's a bigger red flag at this point in the process.
There's almost like a bit of a strategic inflection point that you face and that really almost every company faces, which is, do we stay what we are, but then there's a tech overlay to that? Or do we become a tech company that just happens to be in XYZ business? What do you think about your future in light of that?
I think about that quite often. I think I don't know, you see it in many different aspects, but just as an example, like Swift passport and visa services powered by SwiftPass. Like, I think we would do something, we're not going to do that, but like saying that this is supporting us, not we're supporting it for now. But I think I see that there'll be a transition. Oh, we're AI. I think there's enough cautiousness around, oh, I downloaded this new app on my phone and it's telling me where to go, what to get, and all this other stuff. And it's like, there's this level of kind of maybe not giving it your full trust. I'm trying to think. I have an app that I recently downloaded that connects to your health app in your phone. And it's pulling all this information. And I'm like, what's it making its decision on? And I think still having this human filter but I think this right now still coming out as, we're this human business supported by this great technology.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so we're about at time, but I do have one last question for you, Rob. And this is just having to ask you put on your futurist hat, especially in your domain area. So I'm really interested to learn from you where, like, either you could say this is where you think it's going to be or where you would like it to go. But in the space of leveraging AI for travel efficiency on, say, visa requirements and visa process, especially like we talked a little bit earlier about, it changes. It's not a static. A country can change your visa requirement on a dime, right? So a lot of things can shift. But let's just say on the leisure side, how do you see the future of travel when it comes to visa requirements and with the AI technology? Are we going to go into a position soon where we literally don't need to deal with visas, even though they still exist.
I think we're already seeing it. UK and Europe are a big example of that. The ETAs, Australia's done it for years. The ETA, it's all tied to your passport.
I'm sorry, what's the ETA?
Electronic travel authorization.
Okay.
It's like an e-visa, except an e-visa, you print out this e-visa receipt that you have to carry with you. The ETA it's tied to your passport number. So you pull up to the immigration counter and like they'll know if you've got an ETA assigned. So if you're going in the UK, before you could just, as a US passport holder, you could just go, but now you got to pay, I don't know, it's like $27. And it's an easy form, but it's a form that you go to the airport and they're like, well, you don't have an ETA visa. They can scan your passport at the ticketing counter. And I think that's where things are going. So it's like almost all, I think this ETA type electronic travel authorization is really coming to the forefront. And I think there's a lot of technology changes that have to happen to make that universally accepted. But Europe's probably the biggest example with going in there and you have to fill out this form ahead of time. And if you don't fill it out, you're not getting on the plane. It's like people, like you see reels and videos about it all, but it's happening. And I guess my future thinking of where I would hope is that like an app, like this app that we're building or this mechanism that we're building, things like this will, I don't think there's ever going to be a way that countries are going to not take money from people. If there's a diplomatic way to take money, think how much money China or India takes in with visa fees. It's just that in of itself. They're still going to collect money in some way, and they're going to have your information because they're never going to not want to know who's coming. To get a US visa is damn near impossible. But I do think that I think that's coming very soon. And we're witnessing it. That's been the shift of our legacy businesses. Like when we started out, there's like, just in Chicago, if you can imagine New York and DC, there's like a certain circuit that you would have to do to get all the consulates at the right time. You'd start out at Brazil, then you go to India, then you go to China, then that's all gone because everything's electronic. And now I think with the rise of this electronic travel authorization, I think we're going to quickly see that, oh, your passport's good, but you still have to apply ahead of time. And if you don't know, you don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, I'm sure they're probably checking off boxes where you have the efficiency box being checked on their side, probably the security side, of course, as well, and definitely the revenue side, right? As you said, if they can make money from you having to go through a visa processing, they definitely will. So yeah, that's all very interesting there. Awesome. Joe, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about or share or ask Rob on?
No, I wanted to thank Rob for sharing a glimpse into a world that to many of us is a bit arcane and a bit hyper specific, but I think it's an interesting opportunity to shine a light on issues you face that are actually generalizable, high stakes use of technology where it really counts in a niche process that's probably ripe for reinvention. So thank you, Rob, for being here. It was a true pleasure to meet with you and chat with you. So thanks again.
Thank you guys. It was a great conversation and hope someone finds some use out of it somewhere. So thank you guys for the opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, ask Rob. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining Joel and Mike for another episode of Travel Around the Block. If you have any questions or topics you would like to see discussed on the show, or if you'd like to be considered as a potential guest or sponsor, please reach out to us at hello@travelaroundtheblock.com. And of course, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Wishing you a wonderful day wherever you are around the block.